Would I be happy to see Frank Lampard at Burnley?
The 18-19 season with Derby is still very much heavily imprinted on Justin Peach's brain.
And yes, he delivered Champions League football for Chelsea in his first full season there, but then it went tits up, and then it went tits up even more so at Everton. Frank Lampard is a disaster of a manager. He's a disaster of a coach. Derby finished 6th in the 18-19 season. It was a disaster of the season.
Hello, and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks, and I'm joined by the Stephen Robinson to my Will Still. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
How are you doing, Justin? It's been a while, hasn't it?
I know, I was saying to you off air, I've forgotten how to podcast.
Yeah.
Then you quickly reminded me, have we ever known how to podcast? That's a good question.
Yeah, we've just been given some microphones, haven't we? Just rabbiting on for an hour or so, haven't we? How's it going? How's the CrossFit going?
How's the CrossFit going?
Moved on to Star Jumps yet?
Star Jumps, yes. Star Jumps. I mastered Star Jumps back when I was 9 years old, Ryan. Like everybody should. And if you can't do Star Jumps, get out of here. But no, CrossFit's fantastic. CrossFit's fantastic. Coffee is also fantastic. Thank you for bringing light to my hobbies and my interests.
Your only hobbies and interests from what we've learned on this podcast. And I'll tell you something I've done since we last spoke, Justin. I've purchased a Nintendo Wii.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So okay, right. Let me just process this for a very brief second.
Okay.
Buying a coffee machine for between £600 and £800 is no. No, you can't do that, Justin. That is a disgraceful waste of money. Correct. But buying a Black Panther Lego set, which I can see behind you. Yes. For anyone watching or anyone listening, there's a Black Panther piece behind him. That was £200, was it?
Actually, £250.
Okay, cool. That was £250. And you've bought a Nintendo Wii, which was a console that was released in 2007.
Correct.
Get a life.
It was £40, actually, from Kex? Sex? CX? What they called?
It's where Gareth Ainsworth goes.
Yes, that one. Yeah. I got it from there, 40 quid, remote included and everything. Good. And it was just fantastic, such great value. It's mainly because my partner, she wanted to start playing video games with me, apparently. And I said, well, that's not a good idea because I will absolutely obliterate you on FIFA any day of the week. So instead, we decided to get the Wii because it's one we could both play together. And now I'm absolutely obliterating her at Wii Sports Baseball.
And it's the only sport you'll be playing anytime soon. I'm just curious, why don't you just go out and get a Switch? You clearly have a flagrant mindset towards money by paying £250 for nothing you will ever play with, bearing in mind, with that Lego set.
Though, doesn't it?
It looks terrible. So it looks like a Power Ranger. I'm going to point that out.
Well, I mean, I think that would be pretty cool in itself. It's quite big, isn't it? This being the Black Panther Lego bust that's behind me. But the Wii, I've been playing it non-stop. We've got the Mario Kart. We've been playing that loads. It's great. I've been absolutely addicted, Justin. It's been like mid-2000s all over again.
Yeah, get outside. Get outside. At least CrossFit takes me outside.
Yeah, but I don't want to. You know, but at least I vary my hobbies. Like sometimes I'll play on the Wii. Next time I'll be going to the pub or something like that, or getting some Lego. Yours is just just punched my microphone in disgust. Yours is just CrossFit, coffee, CrossFit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's actually CrossFit, coffee, CrossFit, coffee, CrossFit. Fine, CrossFit. Okay, sorry. Yeah. But look, it keeps me healthy. It keeps me switched on. Drinking too much caffeine does give me some form of anxiety, but it's nice. Coffee, that is.
And I also have that anxiety, but I get rid of it by obliterating my partner on the Wii every day.
I'm glad something's helping you.
Exactly. Football's over now, Justin, and we've got this weird break between any club football and the Euros, so I've got to make up for it somehow with some sort of competitive surge going through my veins. Anyway, welcome to the Number One Championship Podcast, the second tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, it's been a while now since the Championship season officially ended, but that's not stopped the news ticking over in the Championship, has it, Justin? So we've got plenty for us to talk about, mainly in the managerial department with changes at Burnley, Hull, And then, managers securing their futures at other clubs as well. So we'll talk about all of that. And then we're also going to be talking about Leeds' new minority stakeholder, which has certainly been leading to plenty of memes on social media over the past few days, and a couple of other bits and pieces as well. So we'll kick things off with a managerial departure we haven't actually discussed yet on this show, Justin. It involves Burnley. Of course, Vincent Kompany has departed to go to Bayern Munich, and I will be honest, Justin, it feels like we probably missed the boat on this, considering we were still in playoff FIFA when this was all kicking off. But just a quick take, were you surprised to see him get the Bayern Munich job?
I was. It's no disrespect to Kompany, but I think it's obviously clearly a very process-driven appointment. Kompany's style of play is very easy to identify. It's very calm in possession. It's playing out from the back. It's very sort of forward-thinking, and I think that's a very modern way, a modern appointment, if you like. He's a young coach as well, with a very elite background as a player. So I think that's the route that Bayern Munich have gone down. All the memes I sort of understand. Sean Dyche being pissed off at Kompany getting this job. I completely get it. I completely understand it, because he kept Burnley up, whereas Kompany took them down. So you can understand why old Shawnee boy is it could be dismayed. But at the same time, I think with the way Kompany plays, I sort of understand it. That being said, how many elite managers are out there that Bayern Munich can go for? Do they want to keep going for the sort of top 8 coaches in the world, or do they want to try and book a trend, take a risk on a young manager who plays a certain style of play and go down that route? That feels like the way they've gone now. Because Kompany, by no disrespect to him, he's not a better coach than Thomas Tuchel. Thomas Tuchel is elite. He's had a bad season, but he is elite. Kompany's nowhere near it. So I think Bayern are just taking a gamble on someone who's essentially failed.
Well, I think that's very harsh, just in taking a gamble on somebody that's failed. Look, Vincent Kompany had a stinker of a season with Burnley. I think that's undeniable. And his decision not to try and be a bit more solid, for the lack of a better term, certainly ended up costing him in the end. And that's why Burnley are now back in the Championship. But look, you got to look at it this way. His football that he was playing in the Championship with Burnley in the season before last will translate a lot better to a team like Bayern Munich, for example, where he's got much better players. And if he plays like how he did with Burnley a couple of seasons ago, then Bayern could absolutely dominate the Bundesliga. And as far as, his inexperience, I think it's all about taking a risk on, who is going to be the next elite coach. And we were saying when Kompany got Burnley promoted, this guy is on the path to being an elite coach. So, I mean, a good example of them, why it's worth taking a gamble, is, the team that's pipped Bayern to the Bundesliga this season in Bayer Leverkusen, because Xabi Alonso, it was his first, real job in senior coaching, and they took that gamble and it worked off really well for them. If the same happens for Vincent Kompany, they'll be absolutely laughing. So I think it's worth the gamble. Only time will tell whether it's a good gamble or not. But as I say, Justin, I don't want to talk too much about this, because obviously Vincent Kompany won't be joining us in the Championship next season, so it doesn't really matter. And also, we probably have missed the boat on this by about 2 weeks. But let's turn our attentions to who will possibly be replacing Vinnie Kumps at Burnley. And reports say the owner, Alan Pace, is keen on Frank Lampard to replace Kompany, because he wants a big name to come in. However, Kompany's former assistant, Craig Bellamy, is said to have supporters amongst the Burnley hierarchy who would like to see him get a go. Other names linked, I've seen Scott Parker linked as well. Steve Cooper was also being heavily linked, but has allegedly turned down the job. What do you think, Justin? Would you be happy to see Frank Lampard at Burnley?
Would I be happy to see Frank Lampard at Burnley? I feel that if Frank Lampard becomes the head coach of Burnley, this podcast will cease to exist, because listeners will drop off because of my weekly issues that I will bring up with Frank Lampard, and I won't change those issues. I won't change those rants. It'll be the same thing over and over again.
The 18-19 season with Derby is still very much heavily imprinted on Justin Peach's brain.
Yes, and I know people who are outside of Derby County and who've maybe fallen for the Frank Lampard charm need to look into it a little bit more detail. He was very heavy reliant on individual players. Harry Wilson carried Derby County that season. So too did Mason Mount and Martin Mycorn. He was very reliant on those types of individuals. And yes, he delivered Champions League football for Chelsea in his first full season there. But then it went tits up. And then it went tits up even more so at Everton. Frank Lampard is a disaster of a manager. He's a disaster of a coach. And if he's got the right personnel around him, he might be a success. Jody Morris was a key driver, I think, at Derby. Joe Edwards and forgive me for missing out anybody else at Chelsea, but again, they were the key drivers at Chelsea, and that wasn't particularly a success. Derby finished 6th in the 18-19 season. They should have finished with the squad that they had. They should have laid a bit more of a glove on the top 4 at the very least. They didn't. They scraped into 6th. It was a disaster of the season and a disaster of a playoff final.
Yeah, in a way, I kind of want this appointment to happen just so I can hear this every single week, because I just think it'd be absolutely glorious seeing Justin rinsing Frank Lampard every single week. But to give this a bit of balance, I don't think Frank Lampard is a disastrous manager like you're insinuating, Justin. I just don't think he's anywhere near as good as the jobs he gets linked with. And when he's, getting the Chelsea job, for example, or the Everton job, it's all because of the person that he is, in Frank Lampard, a massive name in English football. I think it's a bit bamboozling that the owner, Alan Pace, wants a big-name manager, because surely you're better off going down the process route and actually getting in a coach who has more of a track record than Frank Lampard does. I mean, if you want an example of why big-name managers aren't always a good idea, you only have to look at Birmingham City, don't you? Because that worked really well for them this past season, didn't it? I think Lampard would not be a good appointment for me personally. Don't think it would be disastrous, but I don't think it'd be a good appointment. As you say, when he was in charge of Derby 5 years ago, then he was relying heavily on individuals, and those individuals were very talented and should have finished nearer to the top 2, let alone squeeze into the top 6. And then the Chelsea and Everton jobs just didn't go very well either. So I don't think it'd be a good appointment. If he went in at a lower championship club, I think that is more his level. I don't think a top-level side looking to get back into the Premier League at the first time of asking, that's not his level at all.
I think the worst thing is he gets trusted with money as well, and he spends it so fucking poorly. Oh, I don't know what else I can add about Frank Lampard that I haven't said over the past 2 or 3 years. I think he's a disaster. I think he's a walking disaster, and I think he's got an ego that doesn't befit the jobs that he's done at football clubs, and that really bothers me. I'd much rather them take a risk on Craig Bellamy, who has worked with Vincent Kompany. He knows the style of play. He's been a big part in coaching that. So maybe just take a risk on him. JJ Watt's probably a better option than Frank Lampard, the NFL legend, who is also a part owner at Burnley. He's a big name, isn't he? He's also a big guy. He's a better option than Frank Lampard, if I'm being honest with you. Just Frank Lampard shouldn't be linked with these jobs. If he wants to really cut his cloth and really prove himself, go to a club that's got no budget, no expectation, and try and work wonders there. We criticise Wayne Rooney, but at least he's trying something at Plymouth. At least we can really judge him now. Frank Lampard, get in the bin.
I think that's a fair point with Rooney, because obviously he's been given some big jobs over the past few years in his short managerial career so far, but he's gone to Plymouth. I'm not sure he would have got another job at championship level, to be honest, but he's gone to Plymouth and he's willing to, prove himself there, whereas Lampard somehow keeps getting linked with these big jobs, and I just don't really understand it, to be honest. Let's go to one club who, speaking of Burnley just now, that's one club joining us who have lost their highly rated young manager. One club leaving us who are able to keep their highly rated young manager is Ipswich Town. That's because Kieran McKenna has agreed a new 4-year deal to stay at Portman Road. It looked increasingly likely that he was going to stay, with the likes of Brighton, Chelsea and Manchester United sniffing around him. But what a boost for the Tractor Boys this is, Justin. Because I will be honest, when I heard the rumours that Kieran McKenna was probably going to be leaving, as it seemed, this time a couple of weeks ago, I was fearing the worst for Ipswich, I've got to say.
Yeah, it was a rocky time, but I think it speaks testament of Ipswich Town as a football club to be able to retain such a highly rated manager like Kieran McKenna, because I do think that, I know Man United's a bit of a basket case, but if they come in, it's it's a hard job to turn down for any manager, no matter the structure behind you. Similarly with Chelsea and Brighton, you look at Maresca. There've been obviously certain accusations of him courting that Chelsea job for a while. I wouldn't have been surprised if McKenna wanted to take that. And it's, Brighton's such an attractive job as well. So, fair play to McKenna for sticking with Ipswich. He clearly sees that there's something there. And I think even more kudos has got to go to the Ipswich hierarchy for convincing McKenna that this is a long-term job. This is the long-term job for him. And you've just got to bear that in mind. Ipswich are going to come up. They're going to probably have the lowest budget in the Premier League. They're probably going to struggle at times in the Premier League. They're going to come up against it. It's going to be a difficult process and a difficult year. But they've convinced the highest rated manager coming out of the Championship and going into the Premier League, probably the highest rated manager outside of the top clubs, to stay at Portman Road. It's an incredible achievement.
Yeah, I think one thing you have got to emphasise there, Justin, is giving kudos to Ipswich and the hierarchy there for managing to keep him around, because, as you say, it'd be very easy for him to go, and he may look at how Vincent Kompany has done. I know he's got the buying job, but the point stands that his stock had fallen because of the season that he's just had compared to when he was just fresh into the Premier League with Burnley. So the same thing could very well happen with Kieran McKenna next season, but they've clearly said to him, look, we will give you the platform to continue doing the incredible job that you have done. And he's clearly looked at that and been sold by it. And it's very easy for him to look at. I mean, Brighton is just, I would look at that Brighton job. I think that is such a promising prospect of a job because of the way Brighton are run. That's such a very well-run club. And he's still looked at that and gone, no, I want to stay with Ipswich Town. I mean, Chelsea and Man United, obviously massive clubs in their own right, but, basket cases. Whereas Ipswich, they have, they're clearly very well run in their own right, but, to try and persuade a coach who's as highly rated as Kieran McKenna is, as sought after as Kieran McKenna is, goes to show that they've done a lot of hard work behind the scenes to keep him. Now I'm really excited to see how they do next season, because if he went, then I will be honest, as hot as I am on Ipswich Town, I don't think that ambition would have been there if Kieran McKenna had gone, because it would have been incredibly difficult to get someone in to replace him. So well done to Ipswich, and this is their biggest signing that they'll do of the entire summer, into keeping Kieran McKenna and letting the Ipswich going up tractor continuing into the Premier League. Let's talk about a new manager coming into the Championship, Justin. It's at Hull City, because they have elected their new coach to replace Liam Rosenior. They've appointed former Hamburg boss Tim Walter. I don't expect you to tell me everything about him, Justin, but what do you think of this?
What do I think of it? I can't really. I'm not going to tell everybody how good he was in Germany. I think he's got a good pedigree in terms of where he's come from. Stuttgart, Hamburg, pretty big clubs in Germany. Holstein Kiel, not a huge club, but again, he's got that experience which he can bring with him. I think the only thing I can really say of great value is that the Blazer jumper combo is a great one, and it gives him Bond villain vibes, which carrying that into a Championship season is one that's going to, I think, is going to carry a lot of weight into games. He's going to go in. Bond villains are very scheming, they're very strategy based, and as a football coach, you want a bit of that.
Great. I'm glad that's the sort of analysis you get here on the Second Tier podcast. Well, I have looked into him, and I've kind of found two sides of the coin with Walter. So he's credited with playing entertaining football at Hamburg. Of course, they've been in the second tier of the German division of Germany, for quite some time now, and in the time that they have been in there, he's scored a lot of goals. Well, they've scored a lot of goals in the time that he was there, and they only marginally missed out on promotion in his first 2 seasons in charge. So I think in terms of the style, there's going to be lots of entertainment there for Hull fans, and that's very encouraging. However, he has been at Hamburg, a massive team with one of the biggest budgets in the whole of the German second tier. Last season, they spent twice as much as any other team in the league, and still he didn't get them up. And then he was sacked back in February for inconsistent results. And if you go back over the 2.5 seasons he had at Hamburg, they tended to have an annual drop-off around halfway through the season. So that's interesting. From what I've read about him, he's quite a stubborn character. not much of a plan B. And I've also spoken to Andy Brassel, who's our resident European football expert. He says he's quite a divisive personality. So it's going to be entertaining on the pitch, and it's going to be interesting when it comes to the pressers as well. So that's one thing you can say. At the very least, it's going to be interesting. But based purely off what I've read about him, he doesn't seem like an obvious upgrade on Liam Rosenior. I could be wrong here, and I hope I am, but considering how big a call it was to get rid of Rosenior, it seems like an interesting call to put your faith in a guy who's failed to get one of the most financially backed teams in the German second tier to get them promoted. So that's how I'm looking at it, Justin. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's probably a slightly cynical way of looking at it from you if I was to throw my weight in. I think with Rossini, you've got a manager there who's probably been accused of being too cautious, hasn't he? That's been the sort of the feedback from him being sacked. He's overly cautious. They wanted to release the shackles of the team a little bit, and maybe with Tim Volter in charge this season, the likes of Carvalho, Zaruri, players that they brought in January, mixed with players might have got more out of them, might have won more games. And I think that's the key thing with Hull is there's only a little bit of fine tuning that needs to be done. So if Volter can come in and be the man that fine tunes this side, then there's a lot of potential, especially from a forward-thinking perspective. There's a lot of potential from this Hull side. That being said, that cannot be at the the expense of things at the other end, because Rossini was very good at not conceding a lot of chances and almost being too safe at times, but keeping opposition at bay. I think I'm more optimistic with this one. That being said, I think the only thing that Hull needs to do, I think the thing that's going to hold Volta back is recruitment. They need a couple of forwards, they need a couple of wingers. Carvalho, Morton, loan signings need to be replaced, and that's probably a bigger job right now than maybe Tim Volta.
Yeah, well, you've also got to add in the caveat that this is a guy who doesn't know the league as well, and that's gone one of two ways over the years with managers who are just coming in fresh from abroad with no real experience of the league. He could end up being a Slavisa Jokanovic kind of character, or he could be one of the series of managers we've had over the years who have come in from abroad. I was going to say Leonard Slutsky to give it kind of a Hull kind of vibe on this as well. But there's been plenty of examples that you could use. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does. As we say, it's a big call from the Hull hierarchy to get rid of Rosenior. Is this guy the man to go one step better than how Rosenior did last season? I'm not too sure based off what I've read about him, I've got to say. Well, one team still waiting to find out their new manager, pun not intended there, is Sunderland. It's been 106 days since they last had a permanent manager, and we don't seem to have an obvious front-runner for the job still, particularly after reports that it won't be Will Still. The Athletic say he's concerned about the level of investment in the club, as well as being able to bring his own staff with him. And that won't do much to appease the sections of the Sunderland fan base which aren't happy with the way the club is being run, will it, Justin?
Yeah, I think one thing I will mention is it's not... I think it's probably harsh to say the club's been run poorly. The club's probably been run well behind the scenes, other than recruitment and... Well, probably just recruitment, because I think that's where managerial spotting a good managerial appointment comes from, is that side of things. And that's where the massive concerns will lie, because since Mowbray was sacked, there hasn't been an obvious front runner for the job. Mick Beale came out of nowhere. The front runner, or the person who was linked most and everybody fancied, was Will Still. Has been Will Still ever since that point. Still is Will Still. It's going to get confusing. But he's been the name linked consistently with the football club since Mowbray left in, when was it? November? October?
It was November, December kind of time, wasn't it?
So to not have an obvious candidate in that time, it's been over 6 months since then. It's quite ridiculous. I know they probably didn't envisage sacking Beale so soon, but it was never going to work out. And it just feels like the club is what's the word I'm looking for? They're not prepared for this sort of scenario. They've gone from Alex Neil. Lost him quite early on in that first season back in the Championship. Mowbray was appointed very quickly, and Mowbray steadied the ship nicely. And got a lot out of that squad and overachieved in his first season. And I think it was wrongly sacked last season, especially in the context of not being able to replace him. So I think, the club is probably not being run poorly, but I have major concerns them getting this next appointment right, which points the finger at those running the footballing side of things.
I'm not sure I agree with you with the running of the club poorly kind of side of things, because when they've gone over 100 days without a new manager and they don't seem to have an obvious candidate on the horizon, then it all seems to be becoming a bit of a shambles. I mean, reports seem to suggest that they've had their hearts set on Will Still for several months. He wanted an ambitious club. He said that plenty of times over in France, and they Sunderland have kind of fit the identity of an ambitious club, but in recent times it seems like that's not been the case, because there have been reports that the club don't want to, give massive backing like they perhaps have done in the past, and that's not the kind of thing that will entice a manager like Will Still, I suppose. So they've had so long to try and figure out what they're going to do next now, and it seems like they didn't have an alternative in line if Will Still decided he didn't fancy it. So that's concerning, because look, their season was dead in the water a long time ago. It's been 100 days since they got rid of Beale, and they seem to have no idea where to go next. I mean, think about it. Hull, Norwich and Plymouth have all sacked and got in new managers in the last month, so why is it taking Sunderland so bloody long? The thing I will say as well, smart clubs often know what they're going to do next in the case of any eventuality. You think back to Brighton when, they lost Graham Potter to Chelsea. Roberto De Zerbi was, hurried in quite quickly after that. So you've got to have some sort of a succession plan if things don't turn out right. Sunderland don't seem to have a clue. There doesn't seem to be a succession plan here, because they got rid of Mowbray. Beale was apparently the answer. I don't know what the question is, if he's the answer. And now that that's completely up in the air, we're 106 days on from that, and we don't seem any closer to finding out who the successor for Beale is going to be. So it just seems to be a complete and utter mess at Sunderland. Well, one name which has been mentioned as a potential alternative to Will Still is Stephen Robinson, currently of St Mirren. Will that make the Sunderland Boo Boys happy, Justin?
I think name-wise it wouldn't, but and again, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, what, really? And I actually read up about him in a little bit more detail, and I was sort of, when you consider the fact that there's not one convincing candidate now for Sunderland, Stephen Robinson does become more appealing. Maybe that's by default, but I think he has got a history of success in terms of overachieving with his clubs. I mean, he guided Motherwell to two cup finals in Scotland, lost to Celtic on both occasions, but still quite a good achievement. And he's got back-to-back top six finishes for St Mirren in the SPL. I know it's the SPL, but that's also good going, because St Mirren have never been a well-backed finance club. They've always been one of those teams that have hovered, I wouldn't say near the relegation zone, but they've never diced with Europe until this season, where Stephen Robinson is guided them too. So I think there is an element of success there for him. And I will say this as well, he seems very supportive of other things within football. He said football clubs in the past have a duty of care for players' mental well-being when injured, which I think speaks more of an empathetic side as a manager, which can go a long way. So it's not all about tactics and style of play. Sometimes, being a good human being, as a football manager, can go a long way and get a lot more out of players. So I'm not enamoured by it, but at the same time, I wouldn't be booing the decision to go for Stephen Robinson.
Who was the other club in Scotland he managed, sorry?
That was St Mirren and Motherwell.
Yeah, she's fine, thank you. I think Stephen Robinson, I don't want to sound too harsh, it feels a bit like Beale 2.0 with me, because he's not necessarily a bad coach. I think he's actually a good coach, but definitely not the big name Sunderland fans have been hoping for. And that instantly puts whichever coach they get in on the back foot, because they've got to deal with fans who are instantly unhappy. So you're at a disadvantage before you even get in the bloody dugout. He has done a decent job in Scotland over the last few seasons. So that's why I don't think he would be a bad appointment for a championship side, like a lower championship side, I suppose. My big concern with him potentially going to Sunderland is he's very direct. So I don't...
Language.
Well, I know it's your cup of tea, Justin, but I'm not sure that's the kind of football that I think would suit this Sunderland team. So that's the concern I would have there. But you're right, he does have a record of, improving teams on quite a low budget. So if Sunderland aren't willing to, massively back their managers for the next couple of seasons, then that makes sense. But I just think he's going to be right up against it if they decide to do this.
I'll throw a point at you. I think the issue that Sunderland have got for themselves is that they're promising their other half the best anniversary gift. They're promising their other half a trip to Bali for an anniversary gift, and what they're delivering time and time again is a trip to Cornwall. Cornwall's not bad, but it's the idea of going to Bali that is diminishing the trip to Cornwall, and that's the issue that we've got right now.
Yeah, that's very good, Justin. Very good from you. Is worth saying just before we have a quick break, they have also been linked with AZ boss Pascal Jensen. So that'll be interesting if that comes through. But I mean, Sunderland seem to be linked with every manager under the sun at the moment. So only time will tell who is actually legitimately coming to Sunderland. Justin, let's have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about a couple of new contracts which have been dished out to managers in the Championship. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. So we've got a couple of new contracts which have been handed out to managers in the Championship over the past couple of days. And this first one is significant. Cardiff manager Errol Bullett has signed a new 2-year deal at the club. And this is big news because for those who don't know, his contract was set to expire at the end of this month. As time went on, it looked increasingly likely that he wasn't going to stay. So this is really positive, isn't it, Justin? Especially after the season that he's had with Cardiff, where he's surpassed all expectations, I think, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's monumental. Monumental, mainly because Cardiff needs stability in the dugout. How often have they changed managers over the course of a summer? It's been a very rare occasion where a manager's been appointed one season and they're taking pre-season ready for the next season. I think Steve Morrison was maybe the last person, but again, that wasn't exactly a settled time, and he was gone within months of the new campaign. So, yeah, I think this is a massive decision for Cardiff. I do worry still about scenes, the structure behind the scenes, behind the footballing side, the playing side of it. But what they've got in Errol Bullett is a manager who is ambitious, who is quite clearly good at getting more out of a team than what is expected of them. I think there's still a lot of potential with this Cardiff side, even with the players that they've got. A lot of loan signings need to be replaced, and I think there's a freshening of the squad that needs to be done. But at least there's stability. And I like Bullett, I like his character, I like his, he's quite rigid in terms of his style of play. So I think that will go a long way. And as I say, Cardiff have got the chance to plan. And I think that's the big thing. They've got a chance to plan, and they have not had that for a while.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So stability is not something we can really associate with Cardiff over the past few years. I'm just trying to think back. When was the last time we had a manager last an entire calendar year at Cardiff? For me, I've been going as far back as Neil Warnock. That's how long it has been. So, yeah, this is really good news. Look, Bullett completely surpassed the expectations of myself, and when you've got that kind of manager, you've just got to really cling on to him. The thing that was really interesting is Bullett has said on plenty of occasions that he's not happy with the ambition of the people at the club. He's been told that they don't match. Well, he's been accusing them of not matching his ambitions. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the summer, to see what promises they have made to him, because they've clearly have to have made some promises to keep him there. So that's going to be really fascinating to see. But look, as long as he is there, because when we were speaking about this, it was last week, wasn't it, Justin?
Yeah.
I was a bit concerned that if Cardiff were to lose Bullett, then we could see them almost self-implode. So the fact that he is hanging around now is really, really positive, and that means that Cardiff can build again towards next season and, maybe even improve on the season that they've just had. So that's really, really promising. And while we're on the topic of managers signing new contracts, Michael Carrick has signed one at Middlesbrough to stay there until 2027. He apparently had a bit of interest from the Premier League, although I'm not sure how serious it would have got. But I see this as a commitment to the Carrick project, Justin, and I like that. Do you?
Yeah, no, I love it. Brilliant. No, I think it's really important that, firstly, he commits. I wouldn't be out the realm of possibility that a Chelsea or a Man United come for Michael Carrick. I mean, we've seen Premier League clubs, especially with big budgets, Michael Carrick and the Man United factor as well might have played a part in potentially being swayed. So hopefully this new contract protects Middlesbrough financially, obviously, and also convinces fans that yes, this project is a long-term one. I think last season, we saw a bit of a season of turmoil. Carrick maybe overachieved a little bit in his first season, obviously taking over from Wilder from sort of November time. Maybe overachieved a little bit because of how successful and brilliant they were. And then a lot of things needed to be done that summer, and then the thing they were done. It took time to settle, and then we saw this Borough team really start to thrive towards the end of the season. It was probably too late for a playoff push, but what that gives them is stability going into the new season, a settled squad, a bit more of an idea of what's going on in terms of where they are, where they're at in terms of the quality of players as well. So yeah, I think this deal just encompasses a good direction the football club's heading.
Yeah, I agree with that, Justin. I really like Michael Carrick as a manager, and look, this season, I think the season that's just gone, a lot of people were expecting Middlesbrough to be top 6 again. That didn't happen, and they weren't really anywhere near the top 6 for quite some time. But in the end, they finished 8th, only 4 points off the top 6, which is quite mind-blowing, actually. But look, the main thing is that they've got this platform to go again next season, and it seems like Middlesbrough really fancy their chances next season. Because, again, as we were alluding to last week, there's a nice spine at Middlesbrough for them to build upon and really have a quite exciting season. So the fact that they've got Carrick now who's committed to the cause is really, really exciting. And then beyond this season, it's not completely out of the question at all that he does have suitors in the Premier League if he does have a cracking season with Middlesbrough, because first of all, he's a big name, and he's proven over the past couple of seasons that he is a bloody good manager. So they've managed to tie him down, and that's the good thing. Justin, let's go away from managerial news and talk about one piece of news which has really caught the imagination of football fans across the country over the past week. That's involving Leeds United, because Red Bull have purchased a minority stake in the club. The energy drink brand have also taken over as the front of shirt sponsor. They have said this won't lead to a change of name or badge, but what have you made of this, Justin? There's been plenty of jokes about it. Will they be signing Max Verstappen? Oh, Red Bull have switched from cans to bottles, have they? But what do you think this means for RB Leeds, Justin?
RB Leedsburg. I think it's it's a good financial deal. If you're talking purely business, quite a lot of listeners might switch off at the thought of business, but from a business and branding point of view, Red Bull are massive company, massive brand. So for them to be associated with Leeds is huge, and I think strategically off the pitch, I think it points them points in the fact that they're going in the right direction. They're an attractive proposition to invest in. They went out of business in 2005, and now they've got one of the biggest drinks brands investing in them. It is absolutely massive, purely from a branding point of view, and then financially as well. It's going to boost the coffers as well. It's going to reduce that stress of reduced parachute payment, for example, a second year parachute payment. Obviously, the obvious burden of big Premier League contracts, of Premier League legacy and whatnot in terms of finances. So it's going to reduce that burden. Don't know if it's going to impact financial fair play, that side of things, but I still envisage Leeds needing to sell a couple of assets to balance that side of things. But I think this just gives them a stronger financial standing because they get a big brand invested in them, and it gives us a bit of content as well.
Oh yes, well, that's the main thing, isn't it? All about that content. Justin.
I was going to say, the badge, that clip art badge that they released with the arms folded. You just put 2 cans either side, and then you've got a new badge.
There you go.
RB Leeds.
I would like to see that. Yeah, it's interesting that there is so much interest to invest in Leeds, because you've now got Red Bull, Will Ferrell, Russell Crowe, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas. Someone's clearly doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes to convince these famous people and brands that Leeds are a must-not-miss investment. But it's got to be said, it's very intriguing. I think in the short term, it eases the burden of Leeds having to sell this summer, because we've been talking about that a lot recently since they lost in the playoff final, that apparently they need to raise something like 100 million at least in player sales this summer. So I think that burden isn't as bad after this, although I think there still will need to be some significant sales happening. In the long term, could this lead to Red Bull having an even bigger stake in Leeds? I'd say there's a strong chance of that happening. I'd be very surprised if that did turn into RB Leeds, but it's obviously appealing to a brand like Red Bull to have a club like Leeds amongst its portfolio, because Leeds are a massive club, aren't they? They should be in the Premier League in terms of everything apart from, the fact that they're a championship side. So they've clearly looked at that and thought, this is a club who obviously have a big future, and I think that's a big thing. So it's clearly a sign of confidence that they have that Leeds will be back in the Premier League at some point in the near future. And it's also quite cool to have Red Bull back in your side, plus a Leeds shirt with a Red Bull logo on it. Justin, very nice. In fact, I've just realised I'm wearing my Red Bull New York.
There we go.
Shirt today.
Just put a Leeds badge on it, and you're basically wearing a new Leeds shirt.
Exactly. I mean, it's red, so I don't think Leeds fans would ever wear a red shirt. For,
you get a point. You get a point.
Maybe, but I bought this completely unintentionally. Didn't think about it at all, but it's quite fitting now, I suppose, isn't it? And plus, I like the Red Bull shirts. People may turn their noses back them, but like Leipzig, Salzburg, that kind of thing, I think they're quite nice.
I won't disagree. I was thinking more from a scouting point of view. Will Leeds get access to that network now? Because
probably will do. They could have got Haaland not too long ago if this happens sooner. He's born and raised in Leeds, isn't he, Justin?
Yeah. Well, that could have happened. That'd have been great to see. But I think the shirts look nice. Red Bull's a nice beverage in moderation, and they could get access to the scouting network. It's ticks everywhere.
Yeah, I suppose so. Speaking of interesting behind-the-scenes news, Justin, Watford are offering fans shares in the club in a bid to raise money for transfers. It's despite the club having a pre-tax profit of 24 million in the last financial year, which is the highest in the EFL. So Watford are offering approximately 10% of the club at a value of £17.5 million. Now, what I've said is all very technical, Justin, but to put it in plain and simple terms, if Watford are having to do this, it doesn't sound like they're in an amazing place financially, nor does it sound like the current owners, the Pozzos, are wanting to dip into their own pockets anytime soon. Is that fair to say?
I think it is fair to say. Also, where's the return of investment for supporters? Because obviously, if the aim is to literally just boost the transfer budget, as an investor, purely business mind here, what am I investing in? What's my yield going to be in a couple of years' time?
It feels more like a crowdfunder as opposed to actually investing shares into something.
They may as well have just set up a GoFundMe and said, "Look, we need help. Please invest. Please donate." That's what it sounds like. I'm not going to criticise it too much, and I think the cynic in me is saying yes, the Pozzos are probably withdrawing. Overly funding the football club. But again, if it's all right investing all of this money, but the main issue with Watford, and the main issue with Watford that has been the case for the last few years, is the recruitment is fucking terrible. The recruitment is really, really poor. It's really slapdash. They rely heavily on agents. Ben Manga came in and was gone out the door. He was a very revered technical director at Frankfurt, for example. So again, as an investor, I don't want to invest in that. And I think if Watford fans are doing that, the same issues are still going to exist. The recruitment is still going to be poor unless things are done behind the scenes. And I'm not unaware of things changing from a recruitment point of view. So, what is the point in investing right now?
Yeah, it always feels a bit disingenuous to me that things like this happen when there's a cost of living crisis and everything, and you've got the Pozzos, who are a family worth a hell of a lot of money, and they're urging fans to do things like this just because they're hoping that because they're fans of the club, they'll be willing to dip into their own pockets. It just seems a bit meh, if you ask me. So I'm not a big fan of this. Not a financial expert, so I don't know how much of a sign this is of how dire Watford's financial situation is. I don't think it's disastrously bad, like they're on the brink of extinction, but it doesn't sound like they're in a promising position. But we'll maybe get some more closure on this in the next few weeks. Justin, I wanted to finish off the show. This is I wanted to finish off the show with an email, and this is from Liam Smith. He says, "Hello, Virgins. Both my mate George and I are big Ipswich Town and second-tier fans. And at the start of the season, when you predicted us to come second, we couldn't believe it. So much so that we said we would get a matching tattoo if it happens. And like you boys with your bets, we are men of our words. So here it is." And they've attached pictures of the tattoos, which we'll put on Twitter or X. They've basically got 2024 in Roman numerals. It's absolutely class. But they say they're massive fans of the pod and us. They've they just thought it would be a fun story of how much we have influenced their lives. Cheers again, lads, Liam and George. A lovely little story, Justin. It must be one of the best forfeit tattoos you could possibly get because you're symbolising your team getting promoted.
Yeah, if Derby win promotion, I will get a tattoo. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, no, we're quoting that now.
No. That was
whoever's editing this episode, take out the joke bit afterwards. That is going in.
That's called dishonesty. Yeah, fair play. It's commitment to the cause, and I think as well. I don't know how old Liam is, but this could be a generational thing for them. They may not have witnessed the first promotion back in 2000. This might be the biggest thing that they've witnessed, and they've had to go through a lot. So I'm not surprised. I think this is a key thing. I would never get a tattoo of Derby getting promotion. Just going to put that one out there. I would never do that, mainly because I don't want to. But I think if you are so swayed by your football club and love your football club so much, and you've never been through this, and you've been down to League One, and you've been managed by Mick McCarthy, Roy Keane and Paul Jewell, then maybe the tattoo was worth it.
I think so. I think it absolutely was, especially when it's come from me being the oracle. I mean, you've got to keep in mind, Justin, this past season predicted Ipswich to go up. Season before that predicted Luton to go up. It's going to be interesting to see who, me being the oracle, predicts this coming season and whether we can entice more fans to get tattoos marking the occasion themselves. It's going to be fascinating to see, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether we should encourage it or not.
I do. I absolutely do.
God, what could we possibly get? We could get a quote. XG nerd, XG virgins.
Just we could probably be a bit more creative than that, but I'm sure over the next couple of months, as we gear up towards the new season, which still feels like an absolute lifetime away, by the way, I'm sure we could get something in the bag. So, stay tuned to this. But thank you for getting in touch, Liam. As I say, we'll put the pictures on our Twitter or X so people can have a look at the tattoos themselves. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Second Tier Podcast. Just before we go, thank you to all of those who attended our live show a couple of weeks ago and have been in contact since to say they really enjoyed it. Again, we've not had really a chance to get round to it with the carnage of the playoffs and everything in between, but we're very happy with the feedback. We've had a lot of people asking whether we plan on doing anything outside of London, which we would, of course, love to do, Justin. We don't want to be seen as London-centric, do we? We're proud Midlanders.
Yeah, we don't want to go down to London again.
I mean, I'll happily go down to London again, but, you're taking the pod on tour around the country. I think I'd be up for that.
Yeah, we can go from Plymouth to Sunderland. I can tick 2 boxes then, can't we?
I'm not getting on that coach trip from Sunderland to Plymouth and back with you because you know what you did to deserve that. But yeah, stay tuned. We may have something coming up in the next few months or so. We'll see. And another thing, just before we go, ladies and gentlemen, a bit of admin for you, dear listener. We're still going to be doing 2 episodes a week over the summer, as we were alluding to not too long ago after the playoffs ended. But we'll be releasing our episodes on Mondays and Thursdays as opposed to Sundays and Thursdays. It'll go back to Sundays when the season gets underway. But just for the summer, we'll be putting out our episodes on Monday morning instead. But we promise to keep you entertained over the summer when you fancy a distraction from all the Euros content that's about to invade your podcast platform over the next few weeks. So if you fancy getting away from that and having a breather for a bit, we're here, your dear pals at the Second Tier, to keep you entertained. I tell you what, Justin, it won't be long before we're gearing up again for the new season, will it? It feels like I'm still coming down from the last season, but, a few weeks' time we'll be like, oh, God, we've got to do our league table predictions again.
Yeah, when England get knocked out in the group stage of the Euros, all focus will turn straight towards the 24-25 season.
Who's going to win the Euros, Justin?
Portugal.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Pepe.
Is that all you're giving me?
41-year-old Pepe.
Okay.
In the stars.
Fine. I'm still yet to really decide who I think is going to win. The bias in me says England, but the cynic in me says You've been here before. Don't get yourself up to just be fallen once again. So we shall see, but we'll be keeping a keen eye on that while still focusing on the Championship for you, ladies and gentlemen, over the coming weeks. So we look forward to seeing you again on Monday. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.